Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, good. So thank you very much indeed for welcoming me here today. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Stuart Orr. I am the head of freshwater programs in WWF. I have a few colleagues of mine with me today from, I believe, Finland and from Romania and Austria. Am I correct? Austria, yes, good. So yes, it's great to be here and talk to you a little bit about the partnership and some opportunities that we see going forward. I'm going to talk to you today, obviously, because I'm the freshwater lead, about these beautiful places in the world and in Europe. And these are productive wetlands. They are the home of biodiversity, not just fisheries and turtles, but birds, other animals. And of course, they're vital to economies, whether that's agriculture, energy, etc. So I'm going to talk to you about all of this. WWF is 6,500 people in over 100 countries. I have 470 people in my team who just work on fresh water globally. And we work on everything from hydropower to tagging fish. I have a range of skills in my teams to deal with the local pressures and the local issues because water is such a local challenge. That didn't work. Okay. This is what we call our goal, so our freshwater goal. And just to be clear with you, freshwater ecosystems and their services sustain people and nature. We have to engage with people to achieve our mission because water is so intertwined with human activity. And I will explain a little bit more of that with you now. But we work in some of the most amazing landscapes in the world. This is the world's largest tropical wetland. Does anybody know where that is? Anyone? No? Philippines, no? Amazon basin, close. This is the Pantanal. The Pantanal sits between Brazil, Bolivia, and Paraguay, and it's the world's largest tropical wetland in the world, absolutely full of incredible biodiversity. This is called a flooded forest. This is the Mekong flooded forest in Cambodia. It's an incredible landscape. It's also a landscape that is home to 80 of the last river dolphins in the world. So I will explain that a bit more to you in a minute. And threatened by large hydropower development in the region. This is the Zambezi River, and that is sediment that you see floating down the river. Sediment is a natural occurrence, an extremely important one for river dynamics. And that sediment needs to travel to the deltas, to replenish the deltas, to make them nutritious, to make them suitable for agriculture, and also to protect from climate change. But you probably don't know that the world's largest mined commodity is sand, and it comes from our rivers. In fact, it's also the world's largest illegally traded commodity. So sand is a huge challenge for us around the world as it is extracted from rivers to build cities, roads, bridges. This is an Amazonian river dolphin. There are 8 species of river dolphin in the world. That means a freshwater dolphin. There are 4 species in the Amazon, and we have 4 species in Asia. In India, in Pakistan, in the Irrawaddy Mekong complex, and in China. And these are what we call a keystone species. They're a focal species for WWF. The health of these animals, of course, is an indicator for the health of the rivers. So our programs, of course, while they may engage people, may engage governments, may engage power, ultimately this is our end game. And then right here in Europe, the most beautiful fish in the world, this is the Danube Sturgeon. Isn't that beautiful? Gorgeous. Anyway, so you find these in this country. And in fact, we have 17 offices in WWF from China all the way across Europe into Canada who work on sturgeon conservation in some way, shape, or form. But of course, fresh water is not just about fish and turtles. It's about flyways and wetlands. It's about the homes to millions of different species of birds as they migrate north and south, east and west. And of course, we connect to other iconic species that we care about. In this case, the hippopotamus, but the iconic species that we work to preserve, such as lions and the elephants populations. So freshwater systems touch almost all of the biodiversity goals that we have in WWF and all of the biomes we work. But in order to protect any of these species, we have to engage with the drivers of change. How do people use fresh water? Here's an example of a fisherman in Vietnam. 60 million people in the lower Mekong Basin rely on freshwater fish, that is wild catch fish, as their primary source of protein. This is the food of the poorest people, 60 million people. And yet that food supply is threatened by hydropower, by diversion of water, by industry, by sand mining. We have to engage these issues to protect those ecosystems. Water is a human right. Have to work with people. You cannot disconnect the needs of people and water supply than the places we care about. And in some of the places we care about, that means directly related to rivers and wetlands. 70% of all water taken out of rivers and lakes goes into agriculture. Irrigated agriculture is the largest user of water globally. And that food is essential to human productivity and human health. We could not survive if we did not have irrigated agriculture. But of course, more people on the planet, 2 to 3 billion more people, means a lot more irrigated agriculture. A lot more needs to be taken out of our systems to feed the growing populations. And climate change. Climate change we hear a lot about these days for obvious reasons, but we have to remember that when we talk about the impacts of climate change, we're fundamentally talking about water. Anybody who's seen the news in the last few days, who've seen the flooding in America, or they understand some of the drought situations, or Cape Town, you will understand that the climate is really shaking up extended droughts, extended floods, in a way that is making it very hard for cities, farmers, people to respond. And this last picture is a bit of a strange one, but it's an important one. You're dealing with risk. This is a farm in the Mississippi River, and this farmer's strategy to protect his house is to build a moat. Okay, now the point of this picture is to show you that water can be a catalyst or it can be a constraint. It can destroy or it can nurture. And when it's not managed well, can cause havoc. Today, the world's leading companies tell me and tell others that the biggest challenge that they see to their business is fresh water because of the competition, because of the conflict, because of the nature of how it is or is not available as it used to be in the past. So insurance companies, mining companies, big global corporations will all tell you that risk and opportunity are the way that they look at water resources. Now, I've got a video here that I want to show, and hopefully this is going to work. This is just to give you a flavor of WWF's communications work. And I think the point of that story is unless we work together, and this is really what the most exciting part of my work is that water, while it is a resource that can be such a catalyst or a constraint, is a place where people are looking to collaborate ever more, whether it's between countries, between communities, between businesses and NGOs, between groups like yourself and citizens. People want to engage on water issues. And I think at the heart of the opportunity of what we can do with the Scouts are these ideas of partnership. We work with a lot of different partners in the world, some of them academic institutions, some of them global banks, some of them brands that you may be familiar with, some of them very, very powerful, and some of them very influential. And I think that working with these partners allows us to advance goals on water that we all share, because it's in everybody's interest that water is managed well for people, economy, and the environment. So we're very, very happy and excited to add to that list of partners, partnership with the Scouts. And I think there's a huge opportunity here together to think about environmental issues in your home countries, with your own constituents, and in your communities, and working hopefully with WWF teams in those countries. As was mentioned before, we have history. We have history. Back in 1973, there was the Panda Scouts badge that I believe was connected to an environment. I don't know the name of this here, environmental badge of some kind. Yeah. And I believe the idea is to get a more attractive panda, one that looks actually like the symbol, to make a new one, because this looks a bit like a raccoon, or I'm not exactly sure. That first one really doesn't look very happy. So he's got a horn. Do you see that? It's like a horn. Anyway, we're going to make a pretty panda that hopefully will be part of your environmental education going forward in the partnership. So I understand that there are two really large goals in your own work around Aichi target number 1 and the Sustainable Development Goals. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that because we also work very, very closely on the Sustainable Development Goals and Aichi target 1. So I think you're all familiar with this. Yeah, somewhat familiar. SDG 6, of course, water and sanitation is extremely important to us, but you will find that water flows through so many of the Sustainable Development Goals. In fact, this picture here actually puts water at the heart of the SDGs. Now, I recognize that that's also helpful and also difficult, but water is intertwined with everything. We can't talk about sustainable cities if we talk about water supply and sewerage. We can't talk about climate action unless you talk about the impacts of rainfall and weather and water. We can't talk about clean energy without talking about hydropower. So water really is in the middle of this web of the Sustainable Development Goals. So if we look at it from the perspective of the water cycle per se, then you can see that the SDGs sit in 6A, 6B, all the way around drinking water, sanitation, water quality, thankfully ecosystems, management. You could also see that over there you've also got water-related disasters, partnerships, life underwater, etc., etc. So we have three key areas of the partnership that have been identified. One that I believe you have already been engaged in, which is Earth Hour. The second is around environmental education. And the third is a really exciting opportunity around our planet, which I will talk to in a second. So the first one is really the partnership around Earth Hour and Connect to Earth. And I can see from the pictures that the engagement with the Scouts has been really impressive. And there's some fantastic photography of Scout groups around the world embracing this Connect to Earth. This is something we can build on every year, and I think it's something that countries and troops can be let out of every country. On the education side, which is extremely important to WWF, is how do we engage and involve millions of children and young adults in the 100 countries at least that we work in. I'm sure you're in more than we are. How do we engage in environmental education together? We have a lot of materials, we have a lot of access, we have a lot of understanding of these issues, and equally we can learn from what you people are doing as well. So I think there's a huge opportunity about environmental education in the future, which is a huge goal for WWF. And this is super exciting. So in 2020, there will be a series on Netflix called Our Planet. It is done in conjunction with Silverback Productions and WWF. I believe there are 7 or 8 episodes that will be aired in 2020. What's exciting about this is this will be the best ever nature photography that's ever been put out there. Some of the footage that has been seen on this is incredible. So we're going to have this huge opportunity on the back of the Netflix work to have what we call the halo, the joint work that we do with Scouts and other groups. Huge opportunities on the back of every episode to do advocacy, to do communications, to do work together with citizens to really advance the agenda. I can't say too much about it now because a lot of it's under wraps, but the whole idea of this series and the opportunity that we as two groups could get off the back of this is really, really impressive. So let me talk a little bit about Europe. This is your own backyard. This is the Danube River, which is an incredibly beautiful system. I'm sure some of you have spent time in the Danube. But we have a WWF Living Rivers Europe campaign and what we call an initiative. So within my 470 people, I have 10 big initiatives around the world, and one of them is right here in Europe's backyard. It's really about protecting European rivers and fighting for legislation that is crucial in this part of the world. People refer to forests like the Amazon as the lungs of the planet. I would suggest rivers are the arteries, the veins. They carry life through our systems. But unfortunately, too many of these systems aren't functioning. Less than half of these are actually in what we call good shape. Many of these rivers are blocked. Sturgeon cannot swim all the way up the Danube like they used to because of dams and other infrastructure. We have overuse in some places, heavy pollution in others. So even in Europe, there's a tremendous amount of work that could be done on environmental education, on Connect to Earth, on the Back of Earth Hour, but also in country around various activities. Talk a little bit about that now. So again, it's really important to point this out. We track species around the planet, marine, terrestrial, and freshwater. And you can see we have a downward curve. So these are the abundance of species. So you can see marine species have gone down 36% since 1970. You can see that terrestrial species have declined a little bit more since 1970. But unfortunately, the biggest impacts have been freshwater. 81% loss of abundance globally of freshwater species. Again, dams, over-abstraction, pollution, overfishing, irrigation. There's a lot of reasons why we're in this situation. And so we're trying to think and trying to work very hard and have success in some places of how do we bend this curve? How do we change the tide of biodiversity loss? So here in EU, you may know this or you may not, but the Water Framework Directive is a European law that is probably one of the most progressive water laws in the world. And it protects our waters, but it could be, excuse the pun, watered down somewhat. So there's a call to put pressure from some governments to open up the Water Framework Directive and make it weaker, because some countries don't feel like they want to invest in this. They don't feel that they can contribute or make things better within their country. They don't have the vision to know how to use water without destroying ecosystems. So it's extremely important that we fight very, very hard to protect the Water Framework Directive. But of course, these threats present a real opportunity, because with the power of organizations like WWF and others, and with groups like yours, we can collectively stand up and say, no, we don't want to water down legislation. We want stronger legislation in Europe. And we want by 2027, which is the end of the WFD, to have all rivers in good ecological status. And really part of that is reconnecting people with rivers to strengthen the implementation of the law, make people understand the importance of rivers in the economy and to their lives. And of course, that's that beautiful sturgeon again. Think about and remind them about the incredible life in our own rivers. The most amazing fish. I think it looks like a dinosaur. I mean, kids love dinosaurs. What kid wouldn't love a sturgeon? Maybe I'm biased, I don't know. I think it would make a great Lego. Wouldn't that be a great Lego, sturgeon? So here we go, Coalition Living Rivers Europe. Our European teams are coming together on this Living Rivers Europe, safeguarding healthy waters for people and nature. And you can see we are already starting to build a coalition. These are some of the partners. There are many others. But we would very much love to know how we together can get a movement of 40 million plus European citizens to really care about the rivers and fight and stand up for the Water Framework Directive. And so we think that this is a huge opportunity to work together with the Scouts across Europe on a range of activities, whether that's lobbying, advocating, raising awareness, whether that's collecting plastics and rubbish, whether it's lobbying government, whether it's testing quality of water, or just doing citizen science. There's any number of ways in which local groups could influence this, access these rivers and these wetlands, and let people know that they care. So the Water Framework Directive, the EU is giving what they call a fitness check. As I said, they're opening it up. And we are aiming to protect the Water Framework Directive, and we actually want to revive the initial ambition level of the Water Framework Directive, which was very ambitious. But we cannot weaken this law because these rivers are very, very important to us, not just because they're beautiful to these systems, but to us recreationally, culturally, and otherwise. And just to give you a sense of some of the incredible areas we're talking about, the floodplains, the rivers, the flyways, and the productive lands across Europe. One of the ways we think that you might want to get involved is Big Jump. So Big Jump is an event in Europe every year, July 8th. And on July 8th, people from communities around Europe, including WWF teams, jump into a river or a lake. And it's organized in just about every country. And it would be great to think about how we could do this together. July 8th, by the way, is not a World Cup football day. I checked. So no excuses whatsoever. Get everybody out there. And I think Big Jump could be something that we could do together, or you could think about mobilizing around. It could be a good day out for people. And of course, we seem to forget this. We all know intuitively that water is life, but we forget it all too quickly. Nothing lives without water. Nobody doesn't touch water every single day. Who doesn't touch water in a day? Everybody. It is essential to everything we do, and we believe that rivers are forgotten, undervalued, underappreciated, and need to be protected. So the program and the catalyst is really Rivers for Life, and we would love to come together on that agenda. So the strategy for Europe is to restore European rivers, protection where we can. We're also doing amazing work on dam removal. So anybody from Finland here? Finland, Finland, okay. So my team in Finland are ripping out dams at an incredible level. So when I say dams, I mean everything from this high to 35 meters. But there's a huge push to reconnect rivers in Europe. People want their rivers back. A lot of these dams were put in 20, 40, 50, 60 years ago, and their uses are no longer needed. And yet we can return rivers back to nature, and people want their rivers back. So our Finnish team is doing a fantastic job on this. We're also seeing dam removal in Spain. France just decommissioned 2 35-meter dams to take them out. Unblock our rivers, let our rivers flow, bring nature back. People want it, nature needs it, and it takes these horrible concrete structures away from our beautiful landscapes. It's not to say we don't need energy in some places, but so many of these do not serve a purpose anymore. So the part of our work this year will be on dam removal, restoration, protection, engaging on the Water Framework Directive so that we do not water this down. And really the main message here is that natural rivers are the veins of life in Europe. So again, just some ideas that I think we could connect on as two institutions as we start to reinvigorate our partnership. I'm happy to take some questions, but that's it for now. Good. There are no wrong questions.